In this video, we're going to talk about zeros of polynomials. Rational zero test relates to the possible rational zeros of a polynomial with integer coefficients to the leading coefficient and constant term of the polynomial. So what does that all mean? We can find all the possible rational zeros by taking the factors of our constant, the last number, and putting it over the factors of that leading coefficient, and then putting a plus minus in front. And those are all the possible rational zeros that we could have for the polynomial. So let's go ahead and try it. So we need, it's going to be P over Q, and this is my P, the constant, and this coefficient is my Q. So I'm going to put all the factors with the plus minus, all the factors of 3, so 1 and 3, over all the factors of 1 and 2 for the coefficient there. So I can take 1 over 1, I could take 3 over 1, so positive and negative 1, positive and negative 3. Then I can take my 1 over 2, don't forget your plus minus, and then I can take my 3 over 2. And we're writing all of those kind of combinations of each number over each number there with the plus minus in front. So those are all of my possible rational zeros for this polynomial here. So let's take a look at this next one. 21 is going to be my P, and I'm going to put that on the top there, all the factors of 21, so 1, 3, 7, and 21. And then 3 is my Q. I'm going to put 1 and 3 on the bottom. So now I'm going to go ahead and take all these factors and put them over 1. And so that's going to be plus or minus, well, 1 plus or minus 3. It's all the numbers themselves. So when I put anything over 1, it's itself. Now I'm going to take all these numbers and put them over 3. Plus or minus 1/3. Well, 3 over 3 is 1, and we already have that written, so we don't need to write that. 7 over 3, we don't have that. And 21 over 3, well, that's 7, and we already have a 7. So we are done. Those are all the possible rational zeros for number 2. So these next examples, we're basically going to do what we did in our roots lesson, and we're going to find the rational zero using our graphing calculator, and then we are going to use synthetic division to make it smaller, and we'll keep using that process until we're left with a quadratic. So we'll have to probably do synthetic division twice, and then the remaining equation we will factor or use quadratic formula if it's not factorable to get our final answers. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up Desmos and type this in. You can also use your graphing calculator, which I will show you. So Desmos, I'm going to go ahead and type X and then my little shift and then number 6 for that caret button, and then exponent of 4, arrowing over to get out of there, and then minus 5x to the third plus 5x to the second minus 5x plus 4. Okay, so I'm looking for zeros. Zeros are on the x-axis, and I see one of them there and another one there. So 1 and 4. So I'm going to go ahead and start with 1, and then I'll be at x cubed, so I will need to do synthetic division a second time, and I'll use 4. And those are the numbers that I'm going to use in my box for synthetic division. So starting out with 1, I'm going to use my coefficients 1, negative 5, 5, negative 5, and 4. And I'm going to bring the 1 down, and I'm going to multiply, and I'm going to add, and I'm going to multiply and add, and multiply, and this again should always be 0 because it is a factor. So this, I'm left with a 1x cubed, and so I'm not small enough. So I need to go ahead and do synthetic division again with my 4 with these same coefficients here, and I'm just going to continue, and I'm going to do it again with the 4. 1, 4, multiply, add, oops, that's 0. There we go. Now add, multiply, add, multiply. Okay, so now this is an x squared. That's where we wanted to keep doing that process until we have a quadratic, and we have a quadratic now. We were at 4, we were then at 3, now we're at x squared. So this is x squared, there's no x, and then a plus 1 equals 0. So we can go ahead and solve this by subtracting the 1 and doing the square root. Getting x squared alone and doing the square root. So x is equal to, and this we know is plus or minus when you do the square root, and then what's the square root of a negative 1? That's I. So our answers, our zeros, are 1, 4, those are the two we found from the graphing, and then I and negative I. So putting those into their factor form, it would be x minus 1, it would be x minus 4, it would be x minus I, and it would be x plus I. And there are our 4 factors. And if you need to use quadratic formula, remember that's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And we can solve a quadratic if it is not factorable using that quadratic formula. All right, so let's go ahead and on this next one, I'll go ahead and type this one into the graphing calculator so you can see it that way. All right, so in the graphing calculator, I'm going to go to my y equals up here, clear anything out that's there, and then I'm going to type in my example 2, and then x to the 4th, and then minus 5, x to the 3rd, minus 12, x squared minus x plus 4. Oops. And I didn't even look at that. I am all up in the, forgot to arrow out. So 2, well, let's try this again. X to the 4th, there we go. Arrow over, that happens a lot. Minus 5, x to the 3rd, arrow over, so we're not in the exponent anymore. Minus 12x minus x plus 4. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit graph. It might not necessarily be in the right window, so you can click your window button and set what you want it to be. So I have it at negative 10, 10, and then same for the y, negative 10, 10 for the y value. And I can go ahead and see OK. I'm going to go ahead and click trace, and I'm going to kind of see that this is not at a pretty point there. So that's when I need to go back and make sure I typed it in correctly. And I can see that, uh-oh, I forgot my squared. So we're going to need a whole number, because that's going to be a lot easier to divide out. So always double check that you typed it in correctly and then it matches. And then we'll come back and go, all right, now I can see I'm touching here at negative 1, and I'm touching here at, well, I don't know exactly what that one is, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can hit our trace and kind of continue to trace across these values. And then we can even type in negative 1. Enter, and it will put it right there at that dot if that's what we're wanting to kind of check and see. And then the other one was 4, and yep, we're right there at on the 0 on the x-axis. So I can use negative 1 and 4. So let's go back over here. Negative 1 and 4 are the ones I'm going to use to get me down to the x squared. So negative 1, and then write out your coefficients. And I want you to go ahead and do synthetic division, and then you're going to do synthetic division again, because this is again your x to the fourth. This one will be your x to the third, and we need to do it twice to get down to x squared. So go ahead and do that and check your answer, at least for the synthetic division part, and then we can kind of do the factoring together. All right, so we're going to go ahead and factor what's left here. And so we're going to take our first times our last, come up with the factors of -2 that add to get 1, and we're going to use 2 and 1, 2 and -1, and we're going to put those in group. So my 2x and my -x is what adds up to that 1x. So I put those in the middle, keeping the first term, keeping the last term, and I'm grouping these first two, taking out a 2x, and I'm left with an x plus 1, taking out a -1, left with x plus 1. So I have a 2x minus 1, and I have an x plus 1. So those are my factors, some of them. I have my x plus 1, and I have my x minus 4. I'm always doing the opposite of those signs. And then I'm going to solve these to get my zeros. So I got 1/2 as an answer. I got -1 as an answer. Well, I already had -1 up here. So what I do is I put -1 multiplicity, we kind of abbreviate, of 2, meaning I have 2 -1s. And then 4, which was up here. And so there's all 4 of my factors, and here's all 4 of my zeros. Go ahead and try this last one, and I will post the answer here for you to check with. All right, and there's your answer for that last one. Just a reminder that if you get to something that you can't factor, like x squared plus 3x minus 1, there's no factors of 1 that add to get 3. So then you need to do a, b, c. You'll need to do your x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then simplify. So this right here would be your linear factors, this answer, and then your zeros is going to be what you get when you simplify this, which that a is 1. So you'd end up with, after reducing -1 plus or minus square root 3 over 2, would be your zeros. And this would be your factors. If you could not factor it, or solve it, like this one.